What up, world? This is TheGoalNet, and if you haven't figured it out by now, we are here to talk 2X Pro goalie gear. Hopefully the opportunity to check out my previous unboxing video where I went through some of the specs on the equipment and what you are all getting with the 2X Pro. And what I'm here to do today is the initial impressions review. So that means I've got at least 6 skates, so it's definitely not a long-term review. But it's enough ice sessions where, you know, if something felt great the first time, I'm not rushing and telling the world it's the greatest thing. Or on the flip side, if I hated something the first skate, I'm not running out there and saying something negative, because you really find, you know, skate after skate, you'll start to notice things and dial things in. And then at a later date, depending on how much opportunity I have to use the skate gear, we might get a long-term review. That's a little bit TBD. That's not to say I don't like the gear. That's just an issue of ice times and trying to test, you know, as much gear as I can and share as much of my opinions with everybody and create as much content as I can. So first things first, a little bit of a background with my history with Bauer Gear over the last couple of years. I did have the opportunity to wear a pair of 1S pads extra large for a while, and then I actually had a full set of 1S gear size medium pads, which were too small, but just got a killer deal on the set and jumped on it, and used the 1S glove and blocker. With the Vapor gear, I wore the 1X stuff for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours one day at the Bauer store in Minnesota. Happened to kind of go in, store was dead, and got to play around in their mini rink for quite a while. And remember thinking at the time, definitely thought that Vapor might be better for me, even though I like the Supreme. And here we are, you know, a couple years later with the 2X Pro gear. So first things first, very subject oriented thing in terms of different people are gonna have different opinions, but the aesthetics, the graphics, I'm a huge fan of this. When it comes to goalie equipment right now, I think that nobody is pushing the boundaries of technology more than Bauer. And Bauer is taking some risks. They are trying some new things. And the Odin gear was the first time I think I looked at a goalie pad in a long time and was like, whoa, that looks different. And that carries on to today's line with the 2X Pro. So I'm a huge fan of the printing. I love how clean the gear looks with the no cut and sew. It's very minimalistic. And once they release the Bauer True Design program at retail, which should be coming soon, I think the power of the digital printing is really going to explode as people at home start to tinker and come up with their own designs. So let's zoom in on the pad. So one of the first observations I have around aesthetics is actually how wide the pads look. So I had the opportunity to interview former NHL Rookie of the Year, Andrew Raycroft, a couple weeks ago, and that interview can be found on TheGoalNet.com. And one of the things he talked about was making a gear change in his career, and that's because he felt like he had to look bigger in net. And obviously a lot's changed in the last, 10, 12 years since Raycroft made that change, and the NHL heavily regulates the size of gear. It's narrower, they limit how tall it can be, chest protectors have gotten smaller, glove and blockers have gotten smaller, but there is a reality that goalies still want to look big in net, and you want to look as big as you can in net. And one thing is, anytime I see these 2X Pro pads next to any of my other pads, which are made with traditional methods and have essentially an outer roll and then a separate inner gusset or inner sliding surface, which could be a round roll, could be a flat roll, depending on the brand or the line of equipment from the manufacturer. These pads just look wider, and these aren't white, which traditionally we know white pads, the theory is they look bigger. I'm a solid colored pad screw guy whenever possible, so these pads have very little white in them. So the point I'm getting at here is these pads look big. So if you are trying to look big in net, I definitely recommend these pads. Again, that's somewhat subjective. That is my opinion. But I just know every time I pull in the garage, I see these pads. I'm like, damn, those look wide. And I also posted my Bauer Gear, or actually Rico Gunn did when we did the photo shoot a month ago. He posted some pics of the gear, and that was one of the comments I got, is everybody was like, wow, are those Bauer pads the same size? Because they look wide. So Again, very subjective, but my personal opinion, these pads look very wide. Love the metallic gold detail on these. Kind of hard to tell, but if you look close up, the gold actually shines a little bit in the light. Or if you check out some of the pictures that Aaron, that's Rico Gun, took for me, that really shines. And love the shadowing detail there. I think that's cool detail because it shows printing's capability, but it's not obnoxious. It's not like some of the masks that have too much ghosting on them and it's crazy. You know, as we zoom back out like here, it just adds a little depth to the pad. It's nothing crazy. So I commend Bauer for doing a really good job of highlighting where their graphic technology is different, but not sticking it in your face or making something that was ugly. And generally speaking, I find this to be a great graphic. There's another video, if you check out the other videos on my page, showing the Bauer Customizer. But you can do some great things with this graphic. One of the combinations that I love is if you do the upper dart, the logo, the lower dart, and then this boot graphic, all the same color, and then leave the middle and the upper zone a different color. Unfortunately, couldn't get the gold down in the boot, and that's why I didn't do that, but just TGN's thought, maybe if anybody needs some graphic tips. So moving past the graphics, let's get into a little bit more of the technical features. So the only thing I've really modded on these pads is my Pro Laces. Basically, this is a Pro Lace I designed with Michelle from Pro Laces, but the pads do come stock with the Monster Hal laces, so you are getting elastic toe ties. I just changed again because this is something I designed and promoted, and I also did find the Pro Laces bungee a tad bit springier, but again, if you buy new pads, last thing I think you want to go out and do is buy additional toe ties. So most people will be pretty happy with the Monster. One thing I did find myself doing with the Monster toe ties is adjusting them. They come with a lot of extra slack, and I did find them to be too loose during my first few skates. So I actually just pulled the elastic through the tab and tied the knot to make them shorter. So as a visual reference, you can see with the Monster Hal design here, you can actually slide the elastic through this hole. There's the Bauer logo and co-branded Monster. So you can pull the elastic through here, and then you just tie a knot basically of where you want your length to be. And then I would assume most people would cut it. Just as I was constantly kind of adjusting these and wasn't sure if I was going to stick with the Hal toe ties or not, I didn't want to cut these, and that's why you see all the different knots there, but very easy to adjust. So if you're like me and get these out on the ice and find that the standard kind of stock Hal settings are too loose and the pad's riding up on you, very, very easy to stop, tie a knot, and kind of adjust these on the fly. And that's a good point too, you know, depending on the size of your foot, and if you're wearing a cowling, no cowling, and then how many holes either through the holder or through the cowling you go through will kind of dictate how much elastic you want to use. So that is kind of a nice feature that it is adjustable. So keep that in mind as well. But as I mentioned, pads are riding up a bit, adjusted the Hals and kind of got them where I was comfortable, and then just switched over to Pro Laces because we were kind of finalizing some prototype designs. So most people should be happy with the Hals, so keep that in mind. Again, one more visual, pretty easy to adjust when it comes to that. As we move up the pad, you can see that Bauer has laced in inner calf wing, sliding gusset area, sliding surface, depending on what you want to call that, but they have this protector laced in. But everything is very nice and flush. So everything is very flat when it comes to the sliding surface on these pads. And then when we look at seal, you know, everything is very flat. So that's one of the advantages of the Odin design, in my opinion, is it gets everything clean and seals very well. And then Bauer's generally have a very stiff core, which is going to add to the seal of the equipment. So that was definitely one of the high points I found for these pads, is that they felt like really solid going into the butterfly, snapped in and out very, very well, and really like how clean this inner sliding surface is. So this is the standard knee block. One of the options that became available in the customizer after I actually placed my gear was a Pro Bump, and that's an option I think is going to be extremely popular for anybody ordering custom. And what that's going to do is it's just going to make this knee block, the leveler piece is going to come out a bit, and it's going to make the knee block a little bit bigger. So that'll just give you more surface area to land on and also help with the pad seal. So I strongly recommend getting that. And that's one other thing I'd like to convey to everybody is if you're going to drop as much money as a new set of gear costs, $3 grand these days, I strongly suggest like pumping the brakes, taking the time, go through the customizer, work with a store that knows what they're talking about, and get the gear dialed in for you, because there's a lot of options and you really should take the time and make sure the gear fits you. There's obviously that instant gratification of buying the gear and walking out of the store with it, but the wait times are pretty reasonable, so that's my own 2 cents as well. So definitely check out Bauer's Customizer if you're going to buy this. Play around with it, talk to a guy at a store who knows. But back to kind of the specs. As you'd expect from a Bauer pad, they really changed the game when it came to sliding surfaces, and these do slide very, very well. I think, and again, unfortunately, I don't have the scientific resources to test this, but I think on fast ice, clean ice, Bauer's probably slide the best. Skated yesterday in this gear and really found like transitioning out of an RVH or going post to post in and already starting an RVH, you can just get post to post very effortlessly in this gear. And that's an important thing I find doing kind of my gear testing, is because that's a slide without a lot of momentum. I find all the new pads with the tech material slide very well when you have momentum, but the stuff that when you're in the butterfly and say you need to recover, or you're in RVH, you need to get across from the post where you may not have momentum, the pads that slide really well there stick out to me, and I think that's a good indication of the sliding. One thing I will say is I don't think the Core-Tech material slides quite as well on choppy ice as some of the other solutions out there. But keep that in mind. If you're a goalie that still plays competitive hockey, you get a fresh flood, Zamboni between periods, no issue. It's more if you're a guy that, plays pickup, plays beer league, gets on the ice once a week, and you don't get the luxury of a Zamboni. You may notice that the pads slide better in the first period versus the third. And that's not necessarily unique to Bauer as well. That's something I found with most of the gear doing the testing on the sliding. But again, fresh ice, and again, going from a standstill, these slide really, really well. And one thing I've noticed too that I came to appreciate is once I got the strapping dialed in, these pads are pretty comfortable sliding. I don't know if that makes sense, but I just really like the way that the pad core felt. Again, if I was like kind of in a dead stop, say top of the crease, made a butterfly save, and then had to get to, say blocker side post to recover and make a save, found the pads just to be really comfortable and slide really well in a situation like that. One thing you'll notice with these pads is in Bauer world, this is a little bit more of an S-curve compared to the Supreme line, and that's one of the things that I think Bauer excelled at most with this 2X gear compared to the 1X. Is this is truly a different line than Supreme. I think that was one of the things some people could kind of knock the 1X gear for. It was pretty similar to Supreme with different strapping, and I'll get into the boot in a second, but that's one of the other big changes. But this thigh rise does bend a little bit, and if anybody follows my pal Goalie Gear Nerd on Instagram, he actually showed leaving his pads upright overnight for a long period of time to gently get an S-curve. And I also talked to a couple pros who have the gear, and they've said the same thing as well. So now that I'm done with testing, where I tried to keep everything as stock as possible, I'm probably going to store these pads overnight to see if I can get a little bit of an S-curve in it. And this is a great point too on why I try and get at least a half dozen skates before sharing any opinions, is that the first couple skates, I was finding that I was having a 5-hole gap just kind of due to my flexibility, the way I butterfly and the pads. Turns out a lot of that was due to strapping. Once I got the strapping on these pads dialed in, the butterfly sealed pretty well. I do think a little bit of an S-curve would help just a bit. But generally speaking, was very happy with that. And that's one thing maybe we'll transition to next is the strapping. So when these pads come stock, I showed in my other video, these have a knee flap. I took the knee flap out. I like the leg channel as clean and as open as possible. And I came to figure out wearing these pads, that getting the knee really tight to the edge of the Velcro, and then getting the tune fit strap about halfway through the wrap in kind of a 45-degree angle, where this one's horizontal, and then the strap going down to the calf comes off at the 45. Hopefully that's coming through clear in the video, but we can see this one kind of coming across the calf horizontal, and then that one, and then that's what I'm calling the 45-degree angle. Found this to work really well for me. One thing I did notice, one of my favorite cliches in life is that your biggest strength may also be your biggest weakness. I think the tune strap is the most flexible strapping system. I mean, you have a giant piece of Velcro there that's probably a foot by 6 inches, and the tune strapping reaches literally every single inch of this. So if you like to tinker and play around, there's probably nothing better than the tune fit strap because it gets anywhere you want to go. The downside with this that I found, and this is where I say your strength is your weakness, is that it took me probably 2 or 3 skates to get it to where I was comfortable, and then had a skate, didn't quite get the strap in the right spot, and I started kind of tinkering again. And I even found the other day where, you know, I really paid attention to my strapping was good there. I got on the ice and probably had it about there, and it just felt too tight. I instantly noticed. The good thing is, you know, didn't even have to take my glove off, took my blocker off, moved the strap about 1 inch back like that, and it was perfectly dialed in. So again, the good thing, hopefully this point is clear, is that you can basically adjust the tune fit and make it do anything you want it to do. The downside is, because it's so flexible, you can kind of put the Velcro in the wrong spot, and the tune fit strapping really does work. There's a plastic ring here that actually slides, and when this moves, it really does change the feel and the performance of the pads. So depending on A, your personal preference, B, your stance, C, your flexibility, all those 3 things may dictate how you will adjust your tune fit. So if you buy these pads and after your second skate, you're like, oh man, I made a mistake, just try the tune fit differently. You probably didn't make a mistake. You're probably just in a transition period. And that's my other kind of comment on the strapping, is that I had a little bit, I would say certain pads I can throw on, skate them, I'm like, man, that's a great pad, they're perfect. Other ones take a little bit of dialing in, but after you're comfortable with them, they're great. And I would say that the Vapor falls into that category. So if you're a kid that's on the ice 3-4 times a week, it should be no problem. You know, within week 2 of owning the pads, you'll probably have these dialed in. If you're a beer league guy that gets on the ice once a week, I'm just encouraging you to have a bit of patience with this gear, because it is worth the wait and it does perform well. It just may not be that perfection after first skate. Other things we go down, the materials inside the leg channel are really, really nice. This is Bauer's Quattro Pro material. It's basically like a dark gray Nash, so it gives you a little bit of grip. I like a grippy material in the knee stack. And then Bauer has this as well in the front of the knee area, and then down through the leg channel as well. And then for some of the other materials, this is where I say that Bauer really pushes the limits, in my opinion, of technology. They've got the thermocore material, which is kind of a mesh dry fit style material. And then this is lined with like a plastic coated material for abrasion. So with Velcro straps and with Velcro knee pads, if you don't wear socks, one of the downsides of all the Velcro or wearing your knee pads exposed is that the Velcro straps can wear on the edges if you have nylon wraps. Bauer's basically fixed this between the Aerolite material on the outside of the wrap and then the abrasion zone on there, and the glove and the blocker have that as well. So this is one of the reasons where at the beginning of my review, I said that Bauer is absolutely leading the way when it comes to using high-tech material in goalie pads. Again, this is the Aerolite material, which is throughout the Vapor line. They also use that on Vapor Player and the Protective. One of the other cool new features is down here in the boot. This is very subtle, but with most companies, this lower wrap is sewn in. Bauer made it float, and that's just gonna give you better range of motion. When you go to move your ankle, your pad's in a position like this will actually basically give the wrap some relief so that it can move with you. And then the last thing on these pads, which is another one of the key differentiators I think between Vapor and Supreme, is this new boot. This is more of a 90-degree style boot. So it's gonna come here and then make a right angle going that. And you can see the branding on it. Bauer calls it the Free Flex 100-degree boot. This is a soft boot. So let me get that strap out of the way. So no matter whose brand of gear you're coming from or wearing, you'll be able to appreciate that is a soft boot. And then with that 90-degree angle, what that does when it's that square is that it basically has the pad sit flat on your skate, and then that right angle sits right at the joint where your leg and ankle intersect with your foot. And that means you wear the pad a little bit tighter, and the shin area stays closer to your leg for a more connected feel. And if you look as well at the distance there between the wrap and the edge of the goal pad, it's a pretty snug fitting leg channel. So the Vapor, I would say, is definitely meant to be worn a little bit more snugly than the Supreme. So keep some of that stuff in mind. But generally speaking, like I said, once I got the Tune Fit strapping dialed in, it felt great. One other issue I had too is one of my earlier skates, and this gets back to how great and adjustable this pad is. I slipped off the knee block a couple times, but fortunately Bauer has really nice laced in knee blocks that are really easy to access. So the couple things I did to correct that was move the Velcro strap inside the knee block higher up to put more tension on the elastic so that it is basically tighter and kept my knee in. So as you can see up there, the Velcro strap stock probably comes there, so I moved it up there to give it some more tension. And then I actually went inside the knee block itself and tightened it up. So you can see there's quite a bit of slack there, or excuse me, extra lace versus when they come stock, they kind of look like that. So I untied that lace and pulled it tighter, and since I've done that, the knee landing, the seal has been absolutely phenomenal on these pads, very happy. And this gets back to the adjustability. If you wear your knee elastic across here, you may want a little bit of a looser knee stack so that it can fit like around your knee pad and move with you more. With me not doing it, I want my knee block as firm as possible to kind of stay in place, and then I just want the elastic to basically keep my knee from flying out. So after I made that adjustment, the pads were really, really good. So one of the other things I was thinking about when it comes to adjustability, when I was just showing everybody the knee stack, is that the Tune Fit strapping actually wraps through the inner wrap and around here. And I think the pads came standard with the medium, and because I do wear my leg channel pretty snug, that's what I started with. And again, I encourage everybody to experiment. That's the fun of this gear. There's a lot of options. You get a whole plastic bag full of straps and elastics with the Bauer. That's awesome that they do that, so definitely take advantage of it. As I actually went to large and I put them here, and when I was wearing the medium, I think I had the Velcro here, and with the large, I wouldn't say that I actually changed like the amount of tension on my leg. I just changed where it was connected, and I felt that it just made the pad more comfortable and made it feel more connected to my leg, even though, again, the amount of tension on the elastic was kind of the same, because using the larger strap allowed me to pull the Velcro further out onto the wrap and kind of give me the feeling that I wanted around the calf strap here. So definitely take advantage of the strapping and everything that comes with these pads. So I think the only thing we haven't touched on yet with these pads is probably the rebounds. And I would say that this definitely qualifies as hot rebounds. These will have the curved composite in the thigh rise to make them stiff and seal well. And then due to Bauer's use of hard foams inside the core, that's going to allow the puck to really shoot off of them. I think the only other changes I would like to see in the future comes in the way of the customizer. And Bauer's come leaps and bounds where, in the first 1S, 1X customizer, you could basically add your color accents on type of a white background. Now there's all sorts of things you can change. You can change the thickness of the pad core. You can change you want a Supreme core and a vapor pad stiffness, you can get that. There's a square knee block, an angled knee block, the pro knee block. So there's tons of options. So Bauer's really gone leaps and bounds, and that's good because I think, again, they're pressing the limits of goalie pad technology, and I'm glad to see that the customizer is catching up so people can have the latest technology and also something that's perfectly dialed in. But I would like to see maybe in a future generation, as we try to differentiate Supreme from Vapor even more, is just to get even more of an S-curve inside the pads. Again, Goalie Gear Nerds seem to have done a great job getting a little bit of an S-curve. And as I alluded to, playing with the strapping, I actually kind of mitigated that. But I'm just kind of identifying gaps really where I feel like, you know, somebody may look at these pads and not feel that they're for them. And that's really, when it comes to the pads, one of the few gaps I can see is just a bigger S-curve. And stay tuned to my account. I will try and put a little S-curve in. I don't want to change these too much. Like I said, I've got them dialed in right now. I am happy. But I do love to tinker, and I do think a little bit of an S might go a long way. So those are my thoughts on the pads. Overall, great pad. You know, I'm very, very happy with them. And for a guy like me that loves to tinker, they're a lot of fun to play with in the room as well. So next we'll do the blocker, and then we will save the glove for last. So as I mentioned, talking about sliding, you know, Bauer really changed the conversation, I think, with goalie equipment around that topic a few years ago. And I've never been a blocker, it's just a blocker guy, but it is a cliche, so I've got to say it. And I think Bauer was probably the first company to really change the dialogue there, because they put the curved composite in the blocker board, hyped it, explained the benefits of the hot rebounds. The technology worked. People understood what the performance value was of that technology. And now that's one of the most regular questions I get on DMs and things like that when people see me testing gear and it's a blocker. People are like, hey, how are the rebounds? So this does have the curved composite. So as you can expect, get that one out of the way quickly. The rebounds are hot, but this is a completely new blocker. There's very little carryover from the 1X, which really was, in my opinion, like an updated version of the reactor blocker. This is all new. The first thing you'll see, you know, there's my finger, how thin the board is. So it's a little bit wider up at the wrist and then tapers down. And so that's a little bit of a different design around kind of feel and balance. So one of my favorite things about this blocker is the padding inside. If you've ever seen any of my videos with some of the other brands where I customize, you know, I ask for this design because I love the design of this, where it keeps your hand further away from the blocker board. I feel like that increases your range of mobility, makes the blocker feel snug on your hand. So you're gonna have more, in my opinion, kind of when the blocker's feeling tight, you're gonna feel like you have more control for directing pucks. So that's one of the things I think Bauer, aside from the rebounds with the curved composite, does better than anybody else is this pad in the glove. One of the other great things on this blocker, which a lot of people might overlook, is the cuff. So we've got the abrasion material, we've got the thermocore material, which again is a performance, you know, moisture wicking material. But what's great about this is it's like tight and loose all at the same time. So when this sits in here, it does give me a connected feel. I can feel the backside of the blocker, but because it's not sewn in above the wrist, we can see that here, it gives you great range of motion. You can see how wide you can open that up. So, and you can just see moving it here, I'm just moving the cuff. So Bauer, again, it's something I think a lot of people might overlook, but Bauer's just done a fantastic job with the backhand padding in the cuff, so that wrist area is gonna feel really nice and secure. When it comes to the palm, this is a Quattro material as well, but this is a cream color. This is probably one of the things I would change on the blocker if I happen to order a custom again. So I'm about 6'2". I don't have enormous hands for a guy my size, but you know, probably 7.5, a little bit under 8 inches if I had to measure. And if I had to order a Bauer again, I probably would go with the medium palm. Just don't know if it can, how well it comes through, but there is some slack at the end of my middle finger. So there is kind of some gap here at the end of my middle finger, at the end of my third finger there, the ring finger. My index finger's not as bad, so I can actually slide my hand all the way in and touch the fingertips, but then the problem we get is that when I close it, we get a lot of wrinkles in the palm, and then that, to me, makes the blocker feel a bit disconnected from the stick. So if you have bigger hands, definitely recommend going with the stock, and this gets back to my point earlier about ordering custom whenever possible, especially when you're buying the pro level gear. I would definitely recommend, if you're not, like a 6'4" size guy, or you don't have big bear mitts for paws, I definitely would go with a medium palm. And again, that's not like there's anything wrong with the stock palm, just kind of giving people a heads up on the fit when it comes to that. Really nice thumb pad pillow there. That's one of the things as well that changed. So the 1X blocker is what I would call a two-piece sidewall. So you'd actually see the side of the blocker board here like you do there, and then the sidewall would start below the stitches. This is more in line with the 1S line where it's a one piece, where the whole sidewall is one piece and you don't see the outer edge of the blocker. So this sidewall is really, really stiff. So even though it's thin, I can't even bend that. This is a really, really heavy duty, well done sidewall on this blocker as well. I think the only other thing that I think Bauer's missing that I'd love to see added in future product lines would be around the finger protection. And it's kind of around the redundant padding. Most of the other blockers on the market today do have some sort of padding inside the index finger there, and this is just mesh. And this piece does move just a little bit. So I had one puck ramp up. I mean, it wasn't coming in too hot, no injury. So not like a panic button, like a huge design flaw. That's not what it is by any means. But I do think just in terms of future product improvement, I would like to see, a little bit of padding kind of wrapped around the finger would be a really nice touch. So hopefully we'll see that, in the next iteration of gear, maybe in 2020 or whenever the Vapor Gear gets updated a couple more years after that. But yeah, generally speaking, very happy with the blocker. Some really nice things with the wrist padding and the cuff. The curved composites, the new board is very well balanced. The hand position is centered here, if I didn't mention that. We've got some Aerolite fabric. The palm, the actual material is very soft. Feels good. And I guess that's one other thing I'd wish to see from Bauer and the Customizer is the offering of kind of the classic Nash palm and then maybe one of the more modern palms with some of the grippy material. I'm personally a fan of that. And again, when I think of Bauer goalie gear, I think high-tech materials. I think a rubberized palm of some sort or something with a grip texture would really fit nicely with what Bauer's doing as well. As we can see the gold as well. It's a really cool shot there. Got the puck pretty cleanly. You can actually see the writing on the side of it. And here's a close-up as well of the dimples, which is basically just designed to flow with the printed surface and give the graphic a bit more depth, in my opinion. All right, last up is the 2X Pro glove. This is probably my favorite piece of the set right here. I would definitely say the pads and the glove are my favorite over the blocker. And it's tough because, like I said, once I took the time to get the strapping dialed in, the Bauers feel great. And it's a lot of those subtle movements, recoveries off the post that I love. But this glove, the shape of this is probably the best shaped glove I've ever seen. And what I mean by that is just, and again, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. But the glove sits like that. I'm not stretching it any means. This is just how the glove sits. So when I'm wearing this, I never have found myself doing the old T-smush on the top of the pad trying to open the glove up. It just sits like this when you're done being closed. And it's just got the shape where I feel like it looks really, really big. And that cuff, hopefully it's coming through in the video, is very, very squared away. And the other thing about this glove is that the Game Ready brake is in that class where I think Brian's, there's always kind of the battle for who has the best Game Ready brake. Brian set a new bar, I think with the genetic line, and I think Bauer has either tied them or slightly surpassed them. This is Game Ready. I do tie my gloves up when they're not in use, but I can tell you, and if you watch my unboxing video, It's amazing how well this glove closes, and you can see how nice the seal is up at the T. One other thing I do like about this glove is that in my opinion, I would call it a U shape. And as you can see, the finger area going outward from the palm to the fingertips is curved. It's a concave, so what I'm trying to say is that the glove curls a little bit at the fingertips. So I'm going, it's kind of, you can see just a subtle arch, and I find, probably highlights a little bit better. That's a more traditional glove design versus some of the newer ones. We're getting like a straight angle right there. And I personally find that, and this is kind of when you make mistakes, I'll say, if I don't catch the puck perfectly in the pocket, and sometimes maybe the puck's here when you're closing it, and don't get me wrong, that's kind of compensating for misplay, but things happen. We all play goalie. You get pucks places you're not supposed to get pucks. You make saves, you know, the way they don't teach you in goalie camp, so that's life. And I find that this shape does a really nice job if you don't catch a puck perfectly cleanly of kind of funneling pucks to the pocket, or maybe you actually can trap it in this area with this rounded finger design. So I'm a huge fan of that versus the flat pancake closure on this. One of the options I got with the customizer was the skate lace tee, and this will come stock with a single tee, and I kept that. One of the other really great things with this glove, besides the closure, is the finger stalls. Bauer probably has the softest, most comfortable finger stalls I've ever seen. I don't know if you'll notice it trying it on in the store, but basically most gloves have the Gen Pro like here to hold your thumb in place. It's just like a standard Gen Pro material. You can see that the lining of the inner thumb stall has like a neoprene. That makes the glove feel really soft and spongy and reactive when your thumb's in there. So again, that's one of the little things like the blocker cuff that Bauer got really, really right with this glove. Inside, we've got the catch grip material, which is kind of the type of material I was referring to on the blocker that is an option in the customizer. I'd love to see a blocker palm with the catch grip. And this goes all the way through the palm. This works very, very well. Your hand is very well secured. And then on the back of the wrist, we've got the Quattro material, so very comfortable as well. And we see the branding on this Poron, being that I got this glove early. I don't have the Curve logo there, but the stock retail gloves have the Curve logo, and this will have the Curve composite in the glove as well. And again, can't reiterate enough, the game ready closure on this is amazing. For anybody wondering about the glove break, it's in the same family as the 1X, which is a 60-degree break. So that's the style break that's mostly fingers, maybe a little bit of thumb, but it isn't the supreme break, which would close like that. Closes more like that. So if you've ever worn the 1X glove, you'll be happy, or if you've ever worn a glove with a 60-degree break, you'll be happy as well. And I'm also a fan of a 90-degree break. That's probably my break of preference. And I find for kind of a stock glove off the shelf, this feels really close to that as well. So I think if you like a 60 or a 90-degree break, this could be a good glove for you. One thing I've noticed that's interesting on this glove, it's not really good nor bad, just something to point out, is the wrist cuff. I think it's one of the reasons the glove looks so amazingly square here. But most other gloves on the market either have a kind of bend here going out, or this piece, if we're looking down, tilts out, and it's kind of a skip over feature like the upper part of the blocker curve board. This is perfectly straight. So again, I believe the design goal there was keeping the glove perfectly straight, but it's just one of those unique features I noticed on this glove. A couple of the other things Bauer gets really right is the elastic here. So what that does is, if you think about when you close a glove, when your fingers are pulling down here, and you've got all the material on the backhand of your glove, it's essentially pulling across the back. And if you have Gen Pro here, you kind of have two forces fighting where this is going to pull there. So by having elastic there, it lets the glove flex, which is one of the ways we get that great game ready closure. And then the same principle here, we have elastic. So as we go to close the glove, all these pieces are allowed to rotate and flex and close, and it moves kind of more naturally, more bionically, the way that your body's meant to move. So again, that's one of the little things Bauer really gets right. Things I'd like to see in terms of improvements or maybe things added to the customizer in the future. This is an NHL legal pocket. I'm not held to those rules. And for most of the other companies, I'm able to get a +1 with my single T. I am a single T loyalist because I love the snap when the puck hits this has a pretty good little plastic piece in there. So this is a very rigid spine. Love the feel when you catch a puck cleanly right there. But I would like going with the single T. A little bit of that extra depth is an option, so I'd love to see a +1. And then the other thing is I've gotten very used to not using a nylon strap, and this comes down to personal preference. But I do think there's some other solutions like dials. There's leather straps, so not to say it needs to become stock because I might be in a minority where this is kind of the commonplace, but I would love to see Bauer have a different wrist design with some other strapping here. And again, that's just me being nitpicky, but when you are able to kind of test a lot of the gear like I am, you kind of come to realize, hey, I really like this style. And then I hope that it becomes an option from different brands. And I also hope that each brand puts their own different spin on it, so the companies are challenging each other and pushing innovation. One other thing as well, which is kind of nitpicky. Some of the gloves do this and some of them don't, but this ratchets, the strapping goes through the wrist cuff, so when you pull it down tight, you are kind of forcing your wrist into the palm here. And some of the other glove models I've seen, the strapping actually runs back on the underside of this glove. And you can see if this nylon strap kind of runs under there, it gives your wrist a lot more flex. So if you like to do kind of a pretty aggressive hand up position, it gives you more flexibility. So that's not to say that, again, that this design doesn't work. It is the commonplace, but that's another thing too as well, like how Bauer did a really great job with the articulating elastic piece here for glove flex and on the bottom of the outer wrap on the pad. Would love to maybe see that design iteration as well on a future version of glove. But overall, I'm pretty safe saying that for me, this is probably the best Bauer glove I've ever seen. That's a combination of the Game Ready brake, and if you're not aware, most pro goalies use Game Ready for games. Most of my slots are games. Unfortunately, I'm not 4 or 5 practices a week, so I do understand if you're in that scenario, you may feel compelled to get a pro palm or even 2 gloves. But if you get on the ice a couple times a week like I do and mostly play games, I recommend a pro palm. And Bauer has just absolutely crushed the Game Ready brake, the brake angle on this glove, the shape of the fingers and how well it closes. And I can definitely say that I feel like I'm able to catch more pucks with this glove, just in the sense that it just seals so well. It's a good size. So I'm a huge, huge fan of this glove. And one of the other things too that I should point out Bauer did well, is you can hear the plastic in there. There's also some hard plastic pieces in here. There are not in the T, which allows for that the tip of the T for that really well seal, and there is there. I've actually found with some of the other Game Ready brakes that are this soft, you can catch a puck right there and it actually forces the T down. I don't think I've ever had one go in, but it kind of gives you an awkward rebound. Again, it's just another one of those things Bauer got right with this, that it's just a really good combination. The pocket's stiff, the curvature of the fingers is really good. The seal is really good. The Game Ready brake is really good. So in my opinion, I'd say this is Bauer's best glove. I believe the Supreme style is the better selling and the more popular glove in the pros. But you got to wear what works. And for me, I'm a 60-degree glove guy, 90-degree glove guy. This is really an awesome brake. So overall, Bauer really did advance on the 1X gear with the 2X. So they succeeded in the sense that the customizer is way more robust. You can dial in this gear way better than you can any other set of Bauer gear that they've produced with the Odin technology. So you can customize this gear way better than you could with the 2S at launch, although I believe the 2S has been updated with a lot of the new features in the customizer, but definitely way more than the 1X and definitely way more than the 1S. You can get colors now, so that may be subtle, but for somebody like myself that loves to have color with their gear, you can get color. You're getting all the same great performance in terms of the rebounds, the sliding, The glove's been improved. You know, the angle's really good. It catches really well. So overall, you know, very, very happy with the 2X gear. Just trying to think as I go through. Most of the stuff on the gear I've pointed out that I don't like isn't necessarily bad. It's just when it comes to an opinion and you are, you know, buying gear, it might cost $3,000 upwards. I love to see options in the customizer. So Bauer did take huge leaps and bounds forward this year, but I definitely hope that they continue to work on that, because I think with their combination of technology and materials, is, you know, they have more options to make the gear more personalized. You know, that concept of mass customization. They're going to appeal to more and more goalies every year moving forward. The other big win for Bauer when we focus on the pads is that this pad is different than the Supreme and it's different than the 1X. So this is definitely like a new pad to check out. The boot angle is different, even though it still has the tune strapping. Because of the boot angle and the flexible boot, the way it fits your leg is different. It is more flexible, which is a high demand, you know, with a lot of the positions, the RVH, and wanting to feel connected with your pads. So Bauer's done a really good job at kind of incrementally improving the gear, but taking a huge step forward at the same time. So far, I would definitely recommend, if you are buying new gear this spring, to check out the 2X line. I think one of the questions that everybody always has, just because of you know, some of the launch around the 1S gear, is the durability. I've personally, you know, not had any issues with this gear, but it's obviously only been a half dozen skates. I will probably start using this again more heavily toward the end of the summer once I'm done testing some of the other gear, and I will update that and be transparent with everybody. But I do know, you know, talking to other people, I've been fortunate enough to connect and make acquaintances with some of the guys at InGoal, and I know that, you know, they said on their 2S gear, I think they had, you know, a couple hundred skates, something crazy like that, on their demo gear, and they hadn't seen any durability issues. So I do trust that the Core Tech 2.0 skin, which is thicker than the previous skin, hopefully, you know, fixes any of the durability issues that may have existed in the earlier gear. But that is something, again, I will be transparent with everybody and kind of update you on my progress. So overall, definitely go check out the 2X gear. I'm making this video on Friday. I think it's May 16th or 17th, forgot the date, but the gear is available now. So if you check this out, you know, head over to your local hockey shop. If you live in Canada, Greater Toronto area, definitely recommend checking out the Goalie Crease. Those guys are always extremely helpful. If you live out west in Canada, you've got some great options too with the hockey shop and Pro Skate Goal. So like I mentioned earlier, if you're going to buy this gear, I definitely suggest going through the customizer, working with somebody who knows the product very well, and getting a good fitting. So this is the GoalNet signing out. Head over to TheGoalNet.com if you have any questions. And if you're curious for a progress update, you can throw any questions on the website or check back at a later date. And hopefully we'll have a long-term video review for this gear. Thanks for tuning in, and if you don't mind, throw me a subscribe.